No case should remain unresolved puts the player in the memory of Gyeong, a retired senior police inspector whose one unsolved case has followed her into retirement. 12 years earlier, a little girl named Seowon went missing from a playground, and despite questioning every witness and suspect connected to her, Jeon never closed the case. A figure known only as the Adjudicator visits her and insists that Jeon actually did solve it, she just doesn't remember. And the entire game plays out as Jeon reconstructs her own investigation from scattered fragments of memory. The interface is built entirely around text. Rather than illustration or animation, dialogue fragments appear across multiple columns, one for each person Jeon interviewed at the time, each with a small picture attached that sometimes hints at who is speaking or present. Progress comes from clicking on highlighted keywords inside one statement to connect it with a matching statement somewhere else on the board. Names, locations, relationships all start out redacted, filled in only as the player links enough fragments together to earn that detail. Some information, like Song Min-young's exact birthday, can only be unlocked by first working out why an earlier witness was lying about something unrelated. There's no branching dialogue tree in the traditional sense, and no evidence inventory. The entire mechanic is built on treating memory itself as a puzzle whose pieces don't yet know how they connect. As more fragments connect, the timeline starts contradicting itself in ways that don't make sense at first. Statements imply Seowon died years before the disappearance, while other fragments treat her as very much alive and present during the investigation. The eventual explanation is that the case actually involves two separate families, who both had a daughter named Seowon, born only months apart. One Seowon, daughter of Song Min-young, and a man later listed among witnesses as her ex-husband and a former teacher, who was born severely premature and died within about 3 months. A death her father never formally reported to the authorities. The other Seowon, still alive, belonged to an unrelated family and was the girl whose disappearance from the playground actually triggered Jeon's original investigation. Song Min-young's grief calcified into a delusion that her daughter had never died. When she received a school enrollment notice addressed to her dead daughter, she began searching local playgrounds, convinced she'd eventually find her, and stumbled onto the living Seowon, left briefly unattended by her caregiver who had stepped away to take a phone call. Hearing the child's name called out loud was enough to convince Song Min-young she'd found her own daughter, and she took the child home. That caregiver, a woman named Jeon, becomes one of the investigation's more sympathetic threads once her role is untangled. The fragments initially position her as someone hiding something, and the player is meant to suspect her, but she turns out to be innocent of the abduction itself. Her guilt comes entirely from having stepped away at the wrong moment, while responsible for watching over the Choi family's children. A lapse she blames herself for, regardless of the fact that she had no part in what happened next. 3 days after the abduction, Song Min-young's ex-husband, the father of the Seowon who had actually died as an infant, worked out what had happened after being tipped off by Seowon's grandmother, and returned the living child to her real family. Rather than let his ex-wife face the consequences, he confessed to the kidnapping himself, taking the blame to shield her. He surrendered to police the same day the child was safely returned, and Song Min-young was taken in for psychiatric treatment shortly after. When Jeon eventually confronted the ex-husband with the truth during her original investigation, he didn't deny it. He instead begged her to leave the case of his own dead daughter listed as unsolved, rather than officially close it as a death, on the belief that his ex-wife would cope better believing her daughter was still missing rather than confirmed gone. Once Jeon has reassembled the full timeline, the Adjudicator makes the game's thesis explicit. Everyone involved in the case was lying, in one form or another, including Jeon herself. Reaching the end of the game with every dialogue fragment expanded triggers a final question, asking whether the player now understands why Seowon remains missing to that day, and how many additional keys the player has collected up to that point determines which of the game's two endings play out. The standard ending closes the case roughly as it was always framed. Jeon, the detective, finally accepting the buried truth of what had happened 12 years earlier. The golden ending, which requires the player to have pieced together the timeline with enough precision to hold 2 extra keys in reserve, pulls the floor out from under that framing entirely. It reveals that the person the player has been controlling was never Gyeong at all. It was Song Min-young, interned in a mental institution, having deluded herself into believing she was the detective who investigated her own crime. The Adjudicator, in turn, is revealed to be the real Gyeong, who genuinely did solve the case all those years ago, and has been walking Song Min Young through her own memories, in an effort to help her make peace with what she did. The game was developed by the South Korean solo developer Somi during a stretch of unplanned free time in 2023, and went on to win multiple festival awards following its January 2024 release, including recognition for game design and social impact. If this one resonated, subscribe. New essays drop weekly, and you never know what's coming next. Share it with someone who'd get it, and leave a comment. I want to know which door this opened for you. Mystery Compendium, the archive is always open.